Hey guys, so today I'm going to talk about an Irishman named John Mitchel. John Mitchel was born in Derry, Ireland in 1815 to a Presbyterian minister also named John and his wife Mary. Mitchel Sr. rose to become Presbyterian Synod of Ulster when his son was 7, but later became a focal Unitarian. As to be expected, Mitchell Jr.'s youth was steeped in religion, although he later opposed all religious beliefs while studying at Trinity University. After finishing his legal studies, he quickly founded a practice in 1839, instead of following his father into the ministry. Through his practice, he developed a nationalist attitude due to his increasing frustration over the discrimination of Catholics by Protestant magistrates. In the 1840s, he became an avid writer for various nationalist newspapers and joined the militant Young Irelanders movement. He founded a newspaper himself titled The United Irishman, which expressed a radical nationalist viewpoint. His writings with The Nation and United Irishman were influential, with Irish historian F.S. Lyons referring to Mitchel as one of the most effective journalists that century. His increasingly militant writings eventually resulted in his arrest and deportation to penal colonies in Bermuda and later Australia. His arrest was met by indignance in Ireland and contributed to the failed 1848 skirmishes of the Young Irelander Rebellion. Mitchel's early years was marked by religious and political tension, which is shared by many across Europe during these years. In 1848 was a year of widespread revolution in Europe, due in part to the rise of nationalism. Ireland's situation at the time was one of outrage, which worked as a catalyst to radicalise Mitchel and other physical force Republicans. As such, not only was Mitchel a writer of the famine, but he was also a first-hand survivor and a victim of penal labour. Both these ordeals hardened his nationalist sentiment. His world and its events were interpreted by him with a hatred of the British Empire. This is entirely understandable viewpoint given his experiences. To him, he had lost years of his life incarcerated for the cause of civilization and of British law and order. He would write a memoir known as the Jail Journal of his experiences in prison, which he used to rail against the empire. It was received positively and became an influential book for Irish nationalists, the profits of which helped fund a new life for him in the United States. He continued his nationalist activities amongst the Irish American communities there until his death in 1875. His entire life was dominated by the national struggle, always surrounding himself with like-minded people of a similar background as he. Even his cellmate in Australia was a fellow Irish nationalist. As much as Mitchel believed in Irish nationalism, he had an equally strong hatred of the modern world. As a thinker, he disregarded the Enlightenment and remarked in an 1854 speech that social progress was impossible. The enlightened nationalism of Wolfe Tone to him was wrong. Rather, he believed in a pre-industrial society made of farmers, free from any form of government interference. As early as the 1840s, Mitchel also expressed a hatred for modern capitalism and landlordism in the United Irishmen. Britain, with their industrialized and commercialized empire, represented the exact opposite of Mitchel's social beliefs, which contributed to his Anglophobia. But he was not a socialist, rather an extreme social conservative/revolutionary who despised leftist ideals. This, along with a sense of nationalism, formed Mitchel's perception of the world. For example, he viewed the North-South divide in the United States as one between a capitalist industrial North and a free agrarian South. He supported the Southern states' secession from the Union. Ireland's relationship with Britain was the same struggle against the industrialized world. He even once claimed that, compared to the, quote, dark satanic mills of industrialized Britain, Southern chattel slavery was more humane. This view would leave a stain on Mitchel's legacy and complicates his commemoration as an influential rebel to this day. It was there in the United States that he began his work on the last conquest of Ireland, perhaps, that would become synonymous with the famine. It was also during this time that Mitchel became an advocate for chattel slavery. He was an avid supporter for the Southern cause, citing them as victims of the Northern states, just like Ireland was a victim of Britain. He even moved to Knoxville, Tennessee, and in 1857 began publishing the newspaper Southern Citizen to promote these views. It was in the same paper that he first published The Last Conquest of Ireland, perhaps, in 1858, eventually publishing it in book form in 1860. It would become as well known as his previous jail journal and would further ensure Mitchel's contribution to Irish nationalism. The following year, the United States Civil War would break out, and Mitchel, as well as his 3 sons, would enlist in the Confederate Army. All seeing extensive service, Mitchel would lose 2 of his sons in the war. His third was also badly wounded in the conflict, and his daughter would die of natural causes during the same period. After the war, he continued his work with the Fenians and continued to write extensively about Ireland. He would return to the Armagh to be elected to a parliamentary seat in Tipperary before dying 9 days later in 1875, and was laid to rest in Newry. His legacy would consist of his writings, which continues to draw readers in the present day. Mitchel's motives for his most famous work, The Last Conquest of Ireland, were of course heavily political. Fueled by just anger at the British government, the book is a political accusation as much as it is a history of the famine. It is more rightly characterized as a polemic work shaped by Mitchel's worldviews. The work interprets the famine as an intentional attempt by the British government to thin out Ireland's population. In part, he argued this was to clear land in Ireland to grow food for the growing industrialised population in England. This argument was first expressed by Mitchel in his writings during the famine itself, as he, in his own words, witnessed things that would have, quote, driven a wise man mad. Mitchel's argument has been rebuffed by modern historians, but continues to be a common narrative amongst Irish nationalists. Mitchel's view that while the blight did come naturally, it was the English who created the famine has nevertheless become a political slogan. In a sense, this has proved to be successful in its purpose as a political charge, as the work would radicalise and be prime motivation to future generations of Irish nationalists. Padraig Pearse was one such man, and would later label Mitchel's jail journal as, quote, the last of the 4 Gospels of the New Testament of Irish nationality, the last and the fiercest and the most sublime.